Alright guys, how's it going? I was on the forums earlier, Pete's forums, and I seen a topic that I thought was pretty interesting, and it's basically, the topic was PlayStation 1 versus Nintendo 64, and people's opinions about it, and which system they think is better. And surprisingly, there was a lot of people bashing on the Nintendo 64 there, and you know, personally, I like both systems, but I do prefer different games on different systems. Now, I'll explain this in a second. I'm not biased towards Nintendo at all, although Nintendo was my first system, and I'm very nostalgic about it. But I do like the PlayStation, even though I don't have a PlayStation 3 yet, but I'm planning on getting one. I know I've said that countless times. Anyway, I do like both systems, but I did not get certain games on certain systems. Now, let me get into it. Personally, I got both systems at the same time. And to me, the PlayStation 1 was more of the RPG machine and the survival horror games. And that's just me. The games that I got mostly for my PlayStation were games like Resident Evil 2, RE3, all survival horror type of games, Parasite Eve, stuff like that. Also, the RPGs. PlayStation 1 was the king of RPGs. Final Fantasy 7, 9, Breath of Fire 4, just all the Final Fantasies, all that kind of stuff. Now, my Nintendo 64, on the other hand, was the main system I used for platforming games and for multiplayer games. A little dusty, but games like Mario Kart 64, GoldenEye, of course, Super Smash, Conkers, all the multiplayer games, as well as platformers like Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie, stuff like that. Now, the thing is, PlayStation 1 did have a lot of good multiplayer games like Twisted Metal, Bushido Blade, just off the top of my head I can think of those, and they were really good multiplayer games. However, I did not really buy those kind of games for my PlayStation, just because I thought the Nintendo 64 offered so much better multiplayer experience, mostly because of the 4 controller ports. Almost every game that had multiplayer that I could think of on the Nintendo 64 offered 4-player support. Now, the PlayStation 1 did have a multi-tap, if I remember correctly, though I do not remember hardly anybody having it, nor do I remember ever using one. Any games that require 4 players or have the option for 4 players. And the 2-player games were fun, but the Nintendo 64 is just the system for me. When you're playing a multiplayer game on the Nintendo 64, you didn't have to wait for load times, and that's really, really crappy if you're playing with, like 3 of your other buddies in the room. Waiting for load times is really, really, it sucks. Now, when you're playing an RPG, on the other hand, you're waiting for load times. It's just you mostly. You're not going to play an RPG with other people in the room, necessarily. So the load times weren't so bad. So, in that sense, that is why I like the Nintendo 64 for the multiplayer games. Now, the Nintendo 64 for the RPGs were virtually, they didn't exist, really. I can't really think of any solid, turn-based RPGs on the Nintendo 64, really, at all. There was a few, like Quest 64, which sucked, and Ogre Battle 64, which I believe was a strategy RPG. And then you have, if you count Zelda, it's kind of like an action RPG, but not really. So, Nintendo 64 virtually didn't have any RPGs, really, in North America. So, didn't even have to worry about that. So, basically, the point of this video was kind of just tell me what you guys think. What was your favorite system? Was it the N64 or the PlayStation? And also on the forums, I was hearing that somebody was saying, Nintendo 64 lost the battle. You know, they came in second. Nintendo 64 didn't do bad whatsoever. I mean, everybody had a Nintendo 64. But you know who lost? The Sega Saturn is who lost that generation. And the Nintendo 64 didn't do bad by any means. So, just the point of the video, I love both systems. However, RPGs on the PlayStation, multiplayer and platforms on N64. Tell me what you guys think. Catch you guys later.